What's the one technology every attorney learned in law school?
Westlaw.
Exactly. Full text searching. That they understand, that they know, that they trust. Okay? That's why they revert to full text searching. Even though they may be using it poorly, that's what they understand. We have to get lawyers to the point where they feel that way about the other types of technology, so that they're confident that they can use it, and most importantly, you've got to be able to explain it to a judge.
That's Tom OConnor talking about the elusive small case solution. If you've done this for a while, you realize that a really good small or medium case solution seldom has anything to do with the technology or the pricing structure. It's about the people that design your workflow. And Tom OConnor has thought about this a lot and has been a great resource for folks that are trying to crack the nut of economical electronic discovery in a small or medium-sized case at small or medium-sized law firms. If you're in the New Orleans neighborhood or the I-10 corridor or just about anywhere for that matter, and want to talk with someone really knowledgeable about crafting solutions to small and medium-sized cases, Tom's a guy you might want to check in with. We caught up with Tom at the most recent Georgetown eDiscovery Conference, and this is not one of our more typical gearhead kind of visits with someone, more of a breezy get to know Tom OConnor, and feel free to pick up the phone and call him. He's that kind of guy. Here's our visit with Tom.
Okay, hi, I'm Tom OConnor, and I am the director at the Gulf Coast Legal Technology Center based in New Orleans, Louisiana. We're a small shop, depending upon the size of the cases we're working on. We add people as needed, but I deal mostly in my role in New Orleans with small firms and ESI issues. What are the problems facing small firms in this wacky world of e-discovery that we find ourselves in today?
Tom, thanks so much for our visit. We're here at the Georgetown Conference where we got a chance to catch up. And before we segue into the topic we were going to talk about, which is the small firm solution, I just asked folks to just tell us a little bit about yourself, how you came to get in the space, and a little bit about your background.
Well, New England native, born in Vermont, raised in upstate Vermont. So I grew up in that environment, went off to college, wasn't, like many people in the 60s, wasn't really sure what I wanted to do. And unless it involved the Grateful Dead and staying up all night, for which there were surprisingly few job opportunities. So therefore it was just almost natural. I got out of college and went to law school because I didn't know what to do.
There you go.
And so I did a year of school, dropped out, went back to Baltimore and did a little bit of paralegal work, was banging around. Eventually over the years picked up a law degree nights from a night program. But in the middle of all of that, or towards actually the end of that education piece, ended up in Seattle around 82 or 83, which coincided with the rise of the PC.
Yes.
The advent of relatively inexpensive for the time computers.
Right.
Ended up working for a firm that sent me down to Sacramento on a big coordinated action that had a ton of documents, and we had the whole room with looked like those Raiders of the Lost Ark with all the boxes of paper, and we bought the relatively inexpensive compact 386 with a whopping 60 megabyte hard drive and two floppy drives, big floppies, not the little floppies.
The original floppies.
Right? And on that we ran the DOS version of Summation.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, and that was my introduction to technology.
Yeah.
I think we paid around $6,000 for that computer at the time, right? Again, this is like 83, maybe 84, somewhere in there. But that got me going into the field.
Yeah.
And it just sort of, steamrolled from there. That case got big. We got some notoriety in California for that. I started working with the guys at Summation. But that's how things started. We had large amounts of volumes. Things were relatively expensive. Prices came down, and I just kind of kept on working with that.
You're one of the folks that I know that has continuity. What I say from the beginning of the beginning of times.
I was going to say you're going to say time.
From the beginning of time, yes.
You sound like my doctor. I go for my annual physical every year. He goes, "You're in pretty good shape," and I'm thinking, you're thinking to yourself, for a guy of your age, aren't you?
Aren't you? We'll take it. So it brings a perspective, I mean, people, there are not many folks that bring that perspective that you have.
Yeah.
And let me just open-ended question. I mean, why don't you just tell us what you think kind of the state of the union is as we sit here today on the small firm solution and the kind of phone calls that you get from the other 98% of practitioners who have cases that have a problem.
It's funny because I did a webinar yesterday for the Louisiana Bar Solo and Small Firm Conference, which is virtual this year. And I did a presentation with Judge Scott Schlegel.
Yes.
Judge Schlegel?
He's a gearhead guy.
Yes.
Yes, he is.
Yes. He's a state court trial judge.
Right.
And we were talking about some fascinating things that technology has done, especially when dovetailed with COVID, to make courtroom life easier.
Yes, and he was one of the first virtual courtrooms.
Yes.
A camera for the everybody. You can see everybody doing everything at once in the courtroom, and a real leader that way.
Really great perspective. What I learned was, and this all started really right after Hurricane Katrina. I was active with the ABA at the time and on the board of the ABA Tech Show. Then Katrina hit. We actually had a small apartment in New Orleans. We had come to love the city, and so because of some contacts I had down there, I was asked to be part of one of the committees that was helping rebuild the city. And so when I got down there, of course, what we find is, like many states, 75% of the lawyers are in a firm of 10 or less.
Yes.
A big firm in New Orleans is 125 lawyers, right? Which is like basically the definition of a small firm at ILTA.
I'm with you.
Right?
Right.
You're from Jacksonville. You get it. That whole strip from Houston all the way across to the Atlantic Ocean is cities that are big cities in their state, and their states are mostly rural and dominated by not just solos, but people with really poor infrastructure. So the problem has been this divide, this technology divide. E-discovery has been the bailiwick of big firms, big software companies that need good technology, and that doesn't define 2/3 or more of the attorneys in Eastern Texas, Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, Northern Florida, Southern Georgia, right? That's just not the way it is. And so they were, in essence, not just priced out by the price of the software, which they were, that old paradigm of per gig, per user, per month, just didn't help them. They couldn't afford it. But also, they didn't have high-speed internet access. If you're in Opelousas, Louisiana, if you're in Thibodaux, if you're in, anywhere out in Cajun country, you don't have high-speed internet access. So it doesn't matter. Oh, we're moving to the internet. Oh, great. Does that work on my AOL dial-up? It's a real problem. It has been a real problem. Now, luckily, some of that has been resolved.
Yes. In
the last few years. A number of products have come up. Some of them actually been around for a while. I won't do any plugs here, but there's a half a dozen or more products now that will give you reasonable pricing, which may be either flat file pricing, a case price. Okay, we think you're going to have X amount of data for so long, and we're going to do it this way. Then we'll give you this price. They may give you a contract for unlimited amounts of data for a flat price for 6 months or a year. But the point is, there are pricing alternatives now. The technology still lags behind a lot in places like New Orleans, and we do the I-10 corridor from Lake Charles to Baton Rouge, New Orleans out to Mobile, etc. That's great, but if you start going up again into the middle of the state, and it becomes a problem. We don't have high-speed internet access, or we're getting it slowly. So that's a secondary issue. The related issue to that nowadays is that hasn't stopped the explosion of data. The sheer volume of data is just going through the roof. I talked about 1 million pages used to be a big deal. Now, a 500 gigabyte hard drive is standard on a laptop these days. That's a half a terabyte.
And
right?
You're getting the message that you're running out of space.
And you need more space. And, that's great. I can put that on the internet because prices there have dropped dramatically. But if I don't have high-speed access, then that's a problem. What do I do? Put it on portable hard drives, etc. But the point is, in the words of that great legal technologist, George Carlin, we got too much stuff.
What do you ask people when they call you? What kind of things do you sort of interview a cold caller that says, I got a moderately sized case, commercial case, personal injury case, but I have this data problem? What are the kind of questions you ask to sort of find the good solution for them?
So the first question is, and you just answered part of it, is what kind of case are we talking? Is this a criminal case? Is it a civil case? Are you representing the plaintiff or the defendant? Is it a family law case? God forbid. Those are going to get ugly for several reasons. Is it a bankruptcy? What is it? So that determines what court it is, what rules apply. Right, because there's federal rules and state rules, as you know.
Yep.
And it's also going to figure into what sort of data, are we looking at? And so then the second question I ask is, what is it you want to do? What is it you're hoping to do here? Do you have email you want to search? Do you have Facebook pages you need to look at because it's a wrongful termination suit, and
right.
you want to look at what the guy's been doing? Is it if it's a family matter, if it's a divorce? Each side wants everything that the other side has got. I want his email. I want his messaging. I want his QuickBooks. I want everything. I want it all.
And his credit card statements.
Billing statements, right? Bank statements. I want to know what bank accounts he has, because I'm not looking at mine thinking this isn't adding up. So you get those sorts of. So what kind of case is it, and what do you need to do? Do you need to cull stuff down quickly to find things because you think you know what you need, but you need to get at it and be able to look at it?
Or do you want to explore?
Or do you need to search and poke around and this and that? And then that leads to what has become the third biggest problem, though, which is the diversity of data. We are now, it's not the price of data, it's more the amount of data, and we've got all sorts of different data types. We were talking a little bit here offline beforehand, and I said a great example is the January 6th insurrection cases, where you have 600 so defendants who have been arrested. Each one has a cell phone and maybe a tablet and a laptop at home, and maybe they sent some email from their work account. Right? You've got data residing in different places, but also if you're representing one of those people criminally, the prosecution may have plethora of video information
that you need to see what it is,
and it can be in each source can be a different format. The videos from the cameras, the cell phones that they've taken, surveillance from, I mentioned the steps of the Capitol, right up the steps here, which is owned by the building itself, the architect of the Capitol. Body cams by the police, body cams by the National Guard, perhaps. Observation or surveillance being taken by other police agencies.
Different codecs, different formats.
They're all different formats. You think, it's video. Oh, no. There's video and there's video. Same thing with audio. I've got messages. I've got voicemail. I've got text messages. I've got, you see where we're going with this. There is just...
so what do you do?
An enormous amount. Well, this goes back to the question is, what do you need? What do you want? What are you trying to get at? Are you trying to get at some video that you think exonerates your client? Right? Or do you just need something, perhaps a GPS location off his cell phone that shows he wasn't even at the steps of the Capitol? He stayed down where the president was speaking and never left there. And we can do that easily. We can pull that GPS and introduce that. And then say, and who's got pictures of him to the prosecution? Right. Oh, nobody does. Whoa, that's because he wasn't there.
So even these smaller-ish cases are generating complex and voluminous data sets.
It goes back to a phrase that I always hated. I know our old friend George Socha used to dislike this when people first talked about it, which was ECA, early case assessment. He said, George used to say, that's what lawyers have always done. Your client walks in with a red well full of paper and said, I'm getting sued, and he throws it down, and you start looking through it and going, don't need that, don't need that, oh, billing statements, need that. You always did early case assessment,
right.
And he's exactly right. So what do I need? What do I need to get at to prove my case, to disprove their case, and then we can start to say, okay, how many different data types do I have? How much is there? How am I going to use this? Do I need to search it? Do I need to cull it down to something useful? And eventually, this is what Judge Schlegel said the other day on a webinar I did with him in Louisiana. How am I going to get it into court? How are you going to validate that?
Authenticate it.
Yeah, how are you going to authenticate that? He said one of the biggest problems he has is somebody will hold up a cell phone, some attorney hold up a cell phone. Look at this, Your Honor. Look at this Facebook page. This is blah, blah, blah. And you go, whoa, hang on, counselor. You wouldn't just hold up a photograph and say, look at this photo I got. You've got to lay a foundation here. You've got to authenticate it. So we've got to talk about that issue as well. How are we going to get that in?
I'm with you. And then what do you do next? Sort of find the best combination of technology and process and people for that?
That's right. And it may, in fact, be a combination.
Yeah.
If it's email, that's great. There's tons of ways to search email. If it's text messages, ditto. Text messages are more problematic because they're not individually wrapped out the way email is. Text messages are one long string.
Right.
And you got to break them out.
Right.
But still, you can search them.
Yeah.
Okay. But if we're talking video, in many cases, what we'll do is search the metadata. We may not be actually searching the video per se. There may be software that can do that, but the CIA owns it, and it costs $1 million a megabyte to own. There are some programs now that are starting to get into automatic ingestion and making a record of audio files. Yeah. So if you have an audio file, which again in the criminal world, phone taps, body wires, surveillance, we may have a lot of that. And we want to ingest it and get a transcript on the fly.
I'm with you.
Then I can search the transcript.
In terms of this problem, are you optimistic or guarded? Because the technology is always chasing the solution.
Yes.
Like greyhounds after the mechanical rabbit, and what's pulling out ahead? The diversity and volume of data is going in one direction, and technology solutions are chasing it.
Yep.
And how do you see that race shaping up for the small firm practitioner?
It's there's so much data, and we're trying to search through all this and get something. It's like the old joke about the dog chasing the car. What's he going to do with it when he catches it?
Right.
What am I going to do when I get all this data?
Yeah.
I think this goes back to that ECA equation. This is where the brain triumphs over the processor. We've got to decide, what do we want, how are we going to use it, then we'll decide how we're going to get it.
And make some choices.
And you have to make those choices up front.
We can't get it all.
Right. Now, that can change too. The other thing is none of that's written in stone. Okay, we decided we didn't need to go after that 2 days of audio. Well, now I'm looking at some suggestion here that maybe I do need to import that and listen to it. But, you've got to make some hard decisions up front on what you're trying to get at, what tools you need to get at it, and how much that's going to cost. But yes, I'm bullish on all that because, like all technology, prices keep coming down. Right? The software gets more affordable, the software gets faster and stronger, and we're also getting into areas where things are getting combined. How many softwares do we know about now that include some sort of analytics or AI? That used to be a separate product. So I had to pay for this. Then if I wanted to do AI, I had to pay again and then bring it back in. Now we're getting that all bundled. Things are getting combined, which is great. And then, of course, Microsoft. Microsoft is including an awful lot of what we would call e-discovery features right into the operating system.
Baked in.
And I think we're seeing some more of that on the Google side as well.
Yeah.
And so I'm optimistic that, yeah, the software is going to get more powerful, but also more easy to use. My son, Gail and I's son, is working, I don't know if you know Joy
Seamus.
Morrow. Yeah, Seamus.
Seamus, uh-huh.
Yeah, Seamus is working with Joy Morrow out in Los Angeles. And he's helping her. He's basically doing remote looks at different types of data. Seamus, I need you to look at this. I need you to go in and find PII in this database and redact it. Okay, whatever. She's, different tasks. So I said to him the other day, first of all, I said to Joy, I'm really not happy with all of this because Seamus is learning more programs than I am now. Right? He saw the new reveal 6 months ago before I had even seen it. And I'm going, wait, I'm not sure this is going to work out.
Right.
But I said to him, so what's the deal with all of these things? And he said, well, really, Dad, they're all doing very much the same things. Not exactly the same things, but we're looking at data. We're trying to find certain types of data. Then we're trying to do something with it. Redact it, excise it, print it, report it out, send it to somebody else. He said, the biggest problem is the different interfaces. I have to remember if I'm working for client X that they use relativity, but client Y uses reveal, and client Z uses iConnect, and what's they call different things. Microsoft calls what we call custodians tenants, right? I have to have that nomenclature down to know when I'm doing something how to get at it. So that's a problem.
Fair to say, more than ever though, a small practitioner needs some kind of concierge like you to guide them through this milieu at the moment.
I will tell you that they need a guide, much like Lewis and Clark, to show them the first time. I mean, I don't get a lot of repeat business, right?
That can be that's a complimentary thing to you.
And lawyers are smart. Somebody said to me, this is all really difficult. I said, dude, did you have to learn the rule in Shelley's case when you were in law school?
Right.
If you learn the rule in Shelley's case, you can learn anything. This stuff is nothing, okay? What's the rule against perpetuities, right?
You can do this.
And you'll say, oh, I don't know, but I can look it up. I said, bingo, right?
Gotcha.
Same thing here. There's guides for all this. And so the first thing to do is to get people comfortable and optimistic, confident that they can learn this and use this. It is, and we've talked about this before. It's unfortunate in our profession that they aren't taught more technology earlier on. There's been for whatever reason, they're not taught. The one technology they're taught. I was on a webinar 2 days ago with Mary Mack and Judge Peck and Doug Austin, the question came up: Why aren't attorneys using TAR? Only 30% of the attorneys in these polls are using TAR.
I've never heard of
coding,
it. Yeah,
right?
Never heard of it.
Well, they don't. They've heard of it. They don't understand it. They don't trust it. I said, what do they trust? What's the one technology every attorney learned in law school?
Westlaw.
Exactly. Full text searching. That they understand, that they know, that they trust. Okay? That's why they revert to full text searching. Even though they may be using it poorly, that's what they understand. We have to get lawyers to the point where they feel that way about the other types of technology, so that they're confident that they can use it. And most importantly, you've got to be able to explain it to a judge. We got to get everybody, with the, as I tell Craig Ball, our dear friend, right, who's just, he knows this stuff the way Einstein knew math, right? Which is not the way we know it,
right?
I said, Craig, I don't need the average client who I have. If they're doing a medical malpractice case, they don't need to know how to do a heart transplant. They need to know the difference between a tibula and a fibula, right? Between an artery and a vein, okay? I want to get everybody to that level where they're confident that they can say, Your Honor, we use this program to do this, and here's how it works, and here's how we got these results that we got. Now, reasonable people can disagree. Oh, there's a better program, or I don't like this number, or whatever, but you've got to be reasonable enough to say, here's how I got it. Because the standard is the party doing the searches has to have done a reasonable job. Well, if you feel confident that you did that and you can explain that to the court, that's what we need.
You're going to be okay.
Yeah. If there's a disagreement, that's what the judge is there for. Or the judge will appoint a special master.
And so it is. Tom, you and I have to knock this off because we're late to the next seminar here at Georgetown. I can't thank you enough for the time and the visit you've had with us today. I'm going to put your contact information up at this point so that folks can find you at the Gulf Coast Legal Technology Center and get in touch with you as they need to. And really appreciate the visit, and safe travels home, and see you on the circuit, man.
There you go.